So sometimes you might ask it for a course of action where it is very semantic and it sort of praises you for your capabilities and says you could do X, Y, and Z. And then you say, okay, give me a reality check.
Agentic to me is much more that how autonomous is it, the more agentic it is. But when you're getting to the point where you can delegate a job to a tool like Copilot with specifying the result you want instead of how to do it.
What I discovered was that you could get access to almost unlimited resources through Google AI Studio. It was a very smart move by Google to let people play and experiment with their toolkit. And I found that could handle extremely complex tasks very elegantly.
Welcome to another episode of AI Product Leader. Every week we shine a light on what it really takes to join the AI world. Real conversations with real AI builders, founders, product leaders, AI experts, technologists, and everything in between to understand where the world of AI is right now and what that path looks like, whether you're building AI products or a career in AI. I'm your host, Polly Allen, founder of AI Career Boost, where I spend my time helping product leaders thrive in AI leadership roles. And I've spent my career on both the software development and product sides of the development fence. I'm an ex-Alexa AI principal product manager, where I successfully launched the very first generative AI answers on Alexa. And I'm super excited to welcome our guest today. John Boothroyd is a trailblazing product executive with 2 decades at the frontier of digital transformation, AI, and sustainable infrastructure. He's scaled $100 million businesses at Optus, led Honeywell's leap into AI-powered building optimization, and now drives innovation in renewable energy and aging care, advising solar, battery, and IoT ventures backing climate and care challenges. With patents in intelligent energy systems and a fierce net zero focus, John fuses business impact with planetary scale ambition. I think it's amazing that you're able to come on the show today, John. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Fantastic. Well, as I mentioned, you've had this very impressive background working in some really interesting areas. Can you tell us just a little bit more about your background and how you got into these areas that you focus on today?
Yeah, well, I started my working career with Accenture in the UK, and I got a few early exposures to AI and in the traditional forms during that consulting experience. And so the kinds of case studies that we were looking at and replicating were things around, for example, correlation analysis in retail. So there's some great examples there of people spotting patterns in purchasing that could then lead them to double down on the factors that help drive that. So that was an interesting early exposure. And then we were also looking at neural networks for things like loan processing approvals, and those were a thing back in those days. So yeah. So that was an early exposure with my consulting background. I did a lot of work in industrial companies with IT strategy and the like. I moved to Australia in 1994 and spent a long time in telco, and then became passionate about what could be done to help the transition to net zero and deal with climate change. So moved into the buildings world, and that's where I sort of got my next bite of the cherry with AI and that kind of world. So I effectively kicked off a whole digitization initiative for the maintenance practices at Honeywell. And that involved starting off with a whole bunch of rule-based systems, analytics, traditional old software style. But we did delve into AI to help set up the foundation data around a new building. So that was actually a massive challenge in the analytics world, was not just writing the rules to help you understand whether a building's performing effectively and cost efficiently and in an energy efficient way, but also actually just understanding what the assets were in a building, how to onboard them, how to set up the data stream. So we did develop some AI capabilities around that and some machine learning capabilities to help bring on board new buildings. And then I was responsible for a team that did some of the first work in AI optimization of buildings. And so that was more traditional machine learning based, but still very interesting. I mean, it was a fascinating project, worked with some great data scientists who did some really interesting work. And part of my job as a product leader was to work out where this made most sense is one obvious thing, but also how to explain it to customers. So we had to focus in on, exactly, making it explainable. So, what is this AI doing? Can I trust it to do things to my building? Can you explain to me what it's doing? So we spent a lot of time making sure that we could provide visual representations of what was going on in the building and how the AI was
Mm,
impacting that. And we had some great results. So both in the traditional analytics and the AI optimization, it was very easy to get cost savings and efficiencies of 10% plus, depending on the nature of the building. So yeah, those are my kind of founding exposures to AI before ChatGPT came along.
that's right. Yeah. So I'm excited to dive into the differences. Before we do, I kind of have a random question out of the background. What drove that passion for the net zero and the climate angle? Was there like, is there a story there?
Well, there is a story there actually, because I read a book called The Last Hours of Ancient Sunlight,
Mm,
which basically the title really explains the fact that when we burn fossil fuels,
yeah.
we are using up sunlight that has been stored in plant matter that's been buried under the earth for millions of years and transformed obviously into coal and oil and gas and those kinds of things. And so, what's happening to the planet at the moment is the most rapid reversal of that process, which took millions and millions of years to take place when all these materials were trapped and buried.
Hmm.
And we have been, as a species, literally burning our way through that reservoir of resource at
Yeah.
an incredible pace, and disrupting the climate in ways that have been very rapid, at a scale and speed that the climate systems don't usually have to adjust to
Yeah.
that kind of pace. And so, yeah, it really hit me. First thing I did after that was join an environmental organization and start to find out what could be done, and then started to look for ways I could train myself up. So I did an energy studies postgraduate qualification through a university in Western Australia,
Yeah.
and then made the move into the buildings world, to try and
Incredible.
find some practical ways to change things.
Well, and to scale, because I think a lot of people are like, okay, but what can I do? And
Hmm.
it strikes me that building an infrastructure is actually a way to have an impact that's more than the individual,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
been very satisfying.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, you must find that really rewarding. And then you also work now at the intersection of IoT and aging care as well, right? That's really,
Correct. Yes, yes. So I'm
yeah.
working for an advisory consultancy
Mhm.
that helps organizations plan and deliver digital transformations.
Mhm.
And obviously, there's a lot of interest in that space to look at how AI can help,
Yeah,
and how IoT can help, and how digital transformation can produce efficiencies. Because
yeah.
I'm sure you're aware there's a similar thing happening in Australia to the rest of the world, which is the size of the population, over 65 and over 80 is massively expanding.
Absolutely.
Here, the number of people over 80 is supposed to triple in the next 10 years. And so that puts an amazing load on all the organizations that are involved in that. So they're looking at ways to be more efficient, more effective, and yeah, to help cope with that volume, and also do things in a more elegant way that helps really put the end client, customer, the person receiving care and support,
Yeah.
at the center of what's going on. Whereas, historically in previous decades, they've been very much somebody who is processed by the system and kind of looked after. Whereas now what we want to do is make them, directing their, make them, put them in a position.
Yeah.
I might just wind back. So what we want to do is put them in a position where they can direct what happens and choose their care paths and design their life the way they want it to be, even though they need support.
So something a little more personalized, but and we're seeing that enabled through new technologies. It's so exciting, especially
Yeah,
someone. I'm not
100%.
80, but I am aging.
Well, yes, and we all know somebody who's aging, and we can see
Yeah.
what's happening. We can see it happening. In Australia, the whole topic of what we do to make aged care really work for society has been in and out of the news for a variety of reasons, and the government here is making a lot of changes to drive positive change in the space, including supporting digital transformation and putting a lot of emphasis
Mm.
into that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting because a lot of we were talking recently about how you'd come from this background where you'd been working with neural nets, you'd been working with machine learning technology before,
Hmm.
but when ChatGPT first hit the scene, how did that strike you? Did it feel different from previous machine learning and technology you'd worked with before?
It certainly did. I mean, the first time I got onto ChatGPT, I asked it to describe itself, and I asked it a bunch of questions about things such as whether it had a model of the world, whether it could reason. And at that stage, I was a fairly early user.
Yeah,
It was very self-deprecating and deferential, and didn't claim to have too many great powers.
yeah,
Just explained itself as a language processing machine. But it still was very useful. And I guess my early experiments with it were to use it for research, and obviously it's a massive productivity enhancer when you're trying to scan large amounts of material for
yeah,
nuggets of things that can be done in business and in life. So I started, as many people did, just asking it questions and doing research, and then that evolved, both in my personal and my working life, for it to be more of a thinking partner. And I started
mm,
to challenge it and iterate. So instead of asking for a one-shot answer, I was asking it to come up with the top three things that it thought could be a course of action or a reason, or an explanation, whatever I was researching, and to get it to argue with itself and say, okay, give me the pros and cons of these three different potential options, and then just really kind of almost turn it against itself in a positive way to challenge and be, um, you know, uh, what's the word, a debating partner to
yeah,
itself in a way.
combative a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
so true. Because I keep hearing this. People are like, it's very sympathetic. It loves everything you say, but there's ways to use it that where you can use that to your advantage, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
yeah, and that's it. And so and challenge it as well. So sometimes you might ask it for a course of action where it is very sycophantic, and it sort of praises you for your capabilities and says you could do X, Y, and Z. And then you
Which
say,
is a
okay,
great
give
for
me a
the ego,
reality check.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I feel
100%.
like everyone's egos are doing better since ChatGPT has come out, but I don't know. For decision making, it's necessarily gotten better. But I do think if you do use it in those correct ways. So you've been talking a lot about how you use it, ways that you use it in productivity enhancements. Are there other ways you have found it really, specific tips and tricks for people who are looking to use these tools in their kind of work environment and day to day? What are some other uses of it?
Well, I mean, I've used it progressively for more and more analytical tasks as well. So, I started off using it for research. I started off looking for courses of action. And I
Yeah,
guess sort of somewhere along this journey, perhaps somewhat in parallel,
yeah,
I've used it more as a strategic thinking partner to say, okay, well, what are the factors driving this market? How could this play out? What are the different scenarios? Those kinds of things. But then I've used it more to kind of create artifacts that I
yeah,
need in my working life. So some of the stuff which is less glamorous but is still very useful, is things like contractual documents, policy documents. I created a complete security policy architecture for the business I'm working for now with
yeah.
20 policies, pressure tested them against how implementable they would be in our environment, referencing the actual IT systems we had today. Went through another iteration to make sure that even though the advice was that there are a lot of things you need to pay attention to, that employees would actually know that the following three tools we've chosen will tick off 9 out of 10 of the things you're responsible for. You just need to be aware they're doing that. Make sure you use the tools.
Hmm.
So really practical stuff like that. And then more and more recently, the outputs I've been getting out of the tools I've been using is more spreadsheets and actual working models rather
Yeah.
than just documents and plans.
Actually
And so that,
get it to execute the plan.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and so I've been really impressed with the progress across a variety of tools to be able to create spreadsheets, for example. I mean, I would just encourage people who've tried in the past to just try again, because
Go
I
back
could
and revisit.
say literally in the past few months, I've gone from a stage of, getting a response from the tool I'm using, which often in the IT environment I use here is Copilot, which we all know is backed by ChatGPT,
Yeah.
but it plugs into all our document stores and things like that.
Okay.
But if Copilot offers to provide me a spreadsheet, what it produces today versus what it produced a month ago is chalk and cheese. So, a couple of months ago, it might produce a template with no working formulae. The more recent things it's done for me is a complete working model with multiple tabs, with reference data, with formulae that refer across multiple tabs. And they're not perfect, but if you treat it as something that will get you 90% of the way there, then suddenly you've become 10 times more productive. So you might have something where you have to adjust 10% of it, but it's a massive, massive productivity boost.
Right. And I think so many people don't
So,
even think of those as like you actually are building a tool. Like people are like, "Oh, I'm not building software with this." But you're like, "Well,
mm.
actually, building a multi-tab spreadsheet with advanced, calculations and analytics into it. Aren't you building a tool at that point? You can vibe code your own spreadsheets now.
Well,
And
exactly, yeah.
wow,
And that includes things like a pro forma P&L for an industry sector, an ROI model, things like that. And then, I've also developed some of the processes that I want to use. So a lot of the work that I do currently is finding and working with potential partners who
yeah,
have complementary software and services. And so I've built my whole partner development funnel. The process I've built with the help of AI tools, the steps in the process of gathering the data that's required at each stage, I'm doing with AI tools as well. So, yeah,
incredible.
massive productivity boost. And I mean, just yesterday I had a task that was thrown my way, helping out our COO, and it was a review of some complex insurance and legal documents to see how well they aligned with our security policies.
Hmm.
And it would typically have taken at least 4 hours, but we both thought it's possibly a 2-day task.
Wow.
And my first pass of that was done in 15 minutes.
Incredible.
So
Wow,
incredible.
15 minutes. I was gonna ask what other tools you're using. You mentioned Copilot and like your document stores, Excel, I'm assuming, but do you have any other tools that you find really useful and what's your workflow with them?
Well, I have used a number of other tools, but hats off to Copilot for getting better. So, I'd say the middle of my AI journey between when I first started using it and where I am now is that
Yeah.
I was going off to use a variety of different tools. I was finding that if I wanted to do market sizing, I had to use, I used Grok for a while. That seemed to be actually one of the first ones that was good at doing numerical analysis. And
Hmm.
you could throw it a task such as give me 3 different ways to develop a size for this market and give me a critical analysis of the strengths and weaknesses of the different ways. And then you could use that to decide whether you wanted to go with the top option or whether you wanted to use the second option. You had, some decision support
Yeah.
materials there. But I've actually had to turn to other tools less and less. I think a combination of progressive improvements in ChatGPT sitting behind Copilot. I think they must be making improvements all the time that they're not telling us about, because I know 5.1's come out recently, and but I've noticed a lot of good changes in the run up to 5.1 coming
Right.
out.
Yeah.
But
Just in
but
terms of
one
the
but
responses you were getting from the older models.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
then I guess the other thing, which is, I mean, it's the same tool, but I would say, connecting Copilot to your data stores and leveraging the subscription levels that do
Yeah.
that is a very productive thing to do. So, once I had that set up, I sort of came to the realization that a lot of what Copilot was doing was almost in the area of being agentic. And I know, we have previously debated, and I'm sure you have with many others, what does it really mean to be
Yeah.
agentic?
Totally.
But from the perspective of, agent behavior, including scanning for appropriate resources to do a job
Yeah.
and selecting those resources and planning how to use those resources with very little prompting, Copilot unleashed across, a bunch of SharePoint sites
Yeah.
can find materials that are useful and relevant in ways that align with what I expect, but also surprise me. And yes, it doesn't. Just to close out how agentic is, it's not taking actions. As the final step of being agentic, but it is creating deliverables that I could give to third parties. People within the business and third parties outside the business. So that's
Yeah.
pretty close.
Exactly. I think when we first started talking about agents, like a lot of people replace them with workflows where or think about workflows where you're doing like anything that's multi-step is agentic, anything
Hmm.
that is like, um, an automated workflow. But agentic to me is much more that how autonomous is it, the more agentic it is. But when you're getting to the point where you can delegate a job, a tool like Copilot, with specifying the
Hmm.
result you want instead of how to do it, which it sounds like
Hmm.
that's what more and more you're able to do that. Is that fair?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And then
incredible.
I have experimented with some of the workflow automation tools as well, like make.com.
Yeah. I was gonna
And
ask about that because that's sort of the next step too into like there's productivity with the tools like Copilot, but then there's like, hey, I want to build my own ecosystems. What are some of the things you've done with automation tools like Make?
yeah, so some market scans to look for relevant entities to deal with. So, basically, an automation process to go and do research, to look at given a list of candidates,
Yeah,
go out to the web, find all these characteristics, structure them into an intermediate data store
yeah,
like JSON, and then use that to add rows to a spreadsheet so that I'm actually building out a market map of what those entities are and how relevant they are. So yeah, things like
yeah,
that.
absolutely. Very cool. It sounds amazing. Like you've been really digging into the capabilities of these systems, not only in the productivity space, but also, hey, what can I build with this space?
Hmm.
Um, what would your advice be for someone who's just starting out in this area, whether they have previous machine learning experience or not? If they want to get started, how would you recommend they start out?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend getting hands-on, and I would say try creating things, try multiple tools,
Hmm.
and I'd also, I mean, I'm not on any kind of commission here, but I would recommend people to experiment with some of the higher subscription levels and find ways
Yeah.
to get around the thinking budgets that you run into. So I'm finding this less and less of a problem these days, and I think the tools that are on the sort of entry level subscriptions are getting better and better at using resources efficiently. So
Yeah.
ChatGPT being one, but sort of in the middle of my AI journey, I was absolutely amazed at the difference between using free ChatGPT to try and complete a task where I went through multiple iterations where it would always get 60% of what I wanted right. And then it would say, do you want the other 40%? I'd say yes. And it would do that and then mess up the first 60%. And that to me, if you're running into that, you're running into a thinking budget problem. And
Yeah.
then what I discovered was that you could get access to almost unlimited resources through Google AI Studio. It was a very smart move by Google to let people play and experiment with their toolkit.
Mm.
And I found that that could handle extremely complex tasks
Yeah.
very elegantly in ways that were, like a surprisingly good intern. I mean, people make the comparison between AI tools and, members of staff or interns. And, I carried out a task to do a complex analysis of multiple proposal documents that were all
Okay.
structured in different ways.
Yeah, the proposal documents, and you can you just upload them to their systems, or how
Yeah,
does
I
that
just uploaded them
happen?
into Google AI Studio, got it to normalize the kind of data structures, and then I sort of specified quite a high level of detail, being a bit detail oriented for it to include across the board. It came back with something simpler, and then when I challenged it on that, it actually had a very good explanation of what it had done and why. So
Wow.
just phenomenal. And that was 6 months ago. And I know there's a lot in the in the trade press about how much Google has advanced in its recent releases.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that to me was an example of unlocking the thinking budget and what you could do. So I'd say, yeah, just if you think you're running into trouble, then try expanding the resources that you've got available to you in
Gotcha.
whatever way.
It sounds like it takes some
Um,
tenacity. I think that's what I've definitely found with working with students is like people try something, they get frustrated, and it's like you can't
mm,
just give up. You have to actually
mm,
like do some problem solving and get curious about what's going
yeah,
wrong there so you can understand
yeah,
it
yeah,
better.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, wonderful. Well, this has been a wealth of wisdom, John, in terms of tools to try, how to use it for productivity. If you had to boil down your advice to folks who are looking to get started in space to one sentence, what would it be?
It would be create things using different tools
Yeah.
so you learn what works.
Oh, nice. I like it. I think it's so true. And getting your hands on different ways and there lots of people are always asking me, well, I just want one tool. Like, can I just get started with one thing and it will be the one that I don't have to learn new tools all the time. But I think that the joy of learning new tools is part of the process. Part of the
100%.
learning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Wonderful. Thanks so much for joining us today, John. This is amazing. We have time for one last section, and that is plugs. So, John, if people want to work with you, what kinds of areas should they reach out to you about, and where can they get a hold of you?
Well, I'm really fascinated and invested in three kind of industry sectors. So energy, healthcare, and aged care. There's a lot of really interesting use cases to explore there. So I'd love to reach out and have people reach out to me who work in those areas who are exploring how AI can help.
Oh, fantastic. Excellent. We'll be sure to include your LinkedIn in the show notes as well when they go
Great
out with the
stuff.
show. Wonderful. And from my side, we'd love to plug, we do have our monthly masterclass, The Path to AI Product Leadership, coming up soon. Be sure to check it out at aicareerboost.com. And we'll be talking about the path to AI product leadership, what that looks like in 2026, what the roles out there are looking for, and how to shine at work and move sideways into these AI leadership roles so that you too can be leading these initiatives. The opportunities are out there if you're willing to get hands-on and lead from the front. Once again, thanks so much, John, for joining us this week. You're such a great example of that and leading from the front. So I'm really glad you were able to come and join us today. That's this week's episode of AI Product Leader. We'll see you all soon.